or I think the first question that came to mind to me was how many people from that region have actually been sent on these expeditions to go study about oil exploration or oil related, and where is the government record to account for things like that? But then the underlying question from me to you is how important is it? Can you break down for us in the audience, or I myself hosting, how important is it that the peoples within that region, that the people of Bunyoro State are the masters to that mine, to that oil deposit? They control what goes out and what comes in. And how does that build the nation's economy?
Thank you very much, Desire, for that introduction of such a sad story in the
Mm,
development of our country. I don't know
mm,
whether calling it the development or the damaging that has been taking place in our country. First, I want to remind our listeners when we talk about Alpha, you call it Albertine
Albert
zone.
Einstein. Mm,
Yes, some people may be confused. We are talking about an area of Bunyoro and Acholi that is surrounding that Lake Albert. When they are talking Albertine zone, they are using geological terminology, but that's the area of Bunyoro and Toro. You know, those two states
mm,
share the same border and they share the same lake. Now, that being said, let's look at this historical British guy, um, Mr. Wayland. Well, we
mm,
all know that the British have been the biggest thieves on this
mm,
planet Earth. Whatever they have has been stolen from someone. And they turn around and tell you the British Museum. But what is in the British Museum? I have had a chance to visit that huge building, and I spent almost a whole day just looking at the section on Egypt. For God's sake, sometimes I wonder if there is anything left in Egypt, because whatever is in there was stolen. When you look at the section on India, whatever they could get their hands on was stolen. So then they turn around and call it British Museum. If I had a Buganda museum, I wouldn't put Acholi stuff in there. It would be only Buganda. Now, if you are going to call a British Museum, everything should be British. But now, not. I think they should call it the Museum of our robbery of the entire planet. And with that being said, it is no surprise that all those artifacts that you've shown were stolen from Uganda, and we have done nothing to reclaim them. Like I think the people of Benin demanded that the bronze thing that was hidden in Belgium, I think it was in Belgium or France, they finally got it back. It was a very, very famous artifact. They, we need to get ours back to Uganda and let them be in the Uganda Museum. Now, you've mentioned very nicely that World War II inter, in, disturbed the British program of drilling oil in Uganda. That's true. They had their hands full fighting the Germans, so they couldn't continue. And right after that, the agitation for independence started popping up in every colony. That they found it
mm,
counterproductive to zero in on uh, screwing the colonies, if I could use that terminology. Don't forget that right after World War II, political agitation for self-determination against robbery, against economic exploitation commenced in Uganda under the
mm,
leadership of the famous Mr. Musaz, what was his name? The man who started the Uganda National Congress. That was in 1948. I remember that is when he started. So after that time, the British were on their toes. Now, come to drilling oil under Museveni, it is very unfortunate that the people of Bunyoro and the people of Acholi, for that matter, have had nothing, nothing at all to gain, except a lot to lose. Museveni sent out a number of so-called, I'm saying Ugandans with a small u, not with a capital U. He sent out a number of students to Algeria to study anything to do with petroleum engineering. Because you remember in one of our programs, I complained that much as African countries are oil producing, we do not have petroleum engineering or geology studies in our major universities.
mm,
You may remember that statement. Yes, they took a couple of students to Algeria, but guess what? All of them were Tutsis. Not a Munyoro, not an Acholi, not a Munyankore, not a Muchiga, not a Muganda, not a Muteso or a Musoga or anybody from among the indigenous Ugandans. They were all Tutsis. And Museveni took a picture of himself and those kids there, proud of saying, I have sent Ugandans with small u to Algeria to study petroleum engineering. Now, those of you who may be familiar with the damage these foreign companies have done when it comes to oil spill, I would suggest go to your Google, check out the oil spill of the American oil shipping ship that had an accident not too far from the coast of Alaska. It was the Valdez spill. Well, here in America, they have strict laws when it comes to environment. That forced the company even to go bankrupt. They spent millions and millions cleaning up the spill of that Valdez accident because the oil got on the beaches, destroyed the environment, destroyed the marine life, the birds, you name it. And of course, it screwed up the fishing industry in that corridor. But when it comes to Africa, they do the oil spilling and they get away without anybody uh, whipping their risks. They just get off free. I got a picture here. I want to show you. I hope you can see it.
yes, we can see it now.
You can see the oil spill. This is,
Mm,
by the way, in eastern part of Nigeria,
mm,
where they are drilling oil and they are
mm,
damaging the environment. Now, imagine that kind of damage. That area is totally destroyed. There is no marine life. You cannot get fresh water. You cannot fish in there. You cannot even grow, what do you call it, yam in that area. And walking through it is horrible because you are walking through thick oil. And the companies which are doing it are predominantly American companies. Namely, this picture I'm going to show you tells you the whole
mm,
story.
okay,
Shell
mm,
Oil Company.
mm,
By the way, these are in my upcoming book, which has not been published yet. I just wanted to show you those pictures. It's horrible. And the write up in this manuscript I've just shown you that total areas Like in our country, I would say whole sub-county like a Gombolora totally destroyed by oil spills. And nobody is telling these bloody companies to come and clean up. If someone was strong enough to tell them to clean up, you are talking about millions and millions of dollars to be spent in just cleaning that area. So we cannot afford that risk. Secondly, economically, the area where they have drilled, even if nothing has been spilled in their grassland, gaining nothing, nothing at all. So, what is the benefit of having our oil drilled out of our ground and we are left with such environmental damage and we are gaining nothing out of the drilling? It goes back to the same thing we have been advocating here on UNM, that Africa must embark on an aggressive industrialization policy. If we had leaders, not these pumpkins we have right now, if we had leaders who are serious about developing their country and serving the interests, as I said earlier on when we started this show, that the interests of our country and our people must come first before anything else. And they shouldn't only be first, they should be the first and the last in our
Yes.
thinking when it comes to designing policies that serve our people and our country. I am a strong believer in industrialization of our countries, industrialization of our economies, not only in words, but also in action. This oil being drilled in this territory should and must be refined in Uganda. That will give jobs to our people, and the people, of course, we know that we don't have well-trained petroleum engineers for that matter. Yes, pick the kids of Uganda. Banyoro, Acholi, Lugbara, Yitesot, it doesn't matter. Basoga, Baganda, Banyankole. I'm not talking about these imposters who who have acquired the names that they are Banyankole when they are not. Indigenous Banyankole or indigenous Bachiga, let them study petroleum engineering. Let them work on this refinery as professionals. Then we shall have our people get jobs. By getting jobs, they have good incomes. And when the refinery is built in that corridor, be it in Masindi or anywhere around there, besides the industrialization of that area, there are so many spin-off businesses that are going to come out of that refinery. Now, I can tell you something, and those who are here in the United States should look at the state of Delaware. It is a small state and a very poor one, by the way, because they don't produce much of anything, but they have those refineries and they have all the other chemical industries, which have the biggest economic backbone of that state. The city of Houston, Texas, wouldn't be as big as it is if it was not the oil refineries. And it started with refining oil that was being drilled out of Texas. Now they have started stealing oil from Nigeria, from so many other countries, and now they want to steal the one from Uganda, put it on a ship, bring it to Houston, refine it, and make money. That's how the Bush family became billionaires, because they are in this oil business. Now, we are advocating industrialization of Uganda and at the same time supporting, or rather saving the environment from this kind of damage. When you look at that pipeline being built from Bunyoro all through Tanzania down to the coast, look at the environment damage it is causing. And some people, I remember President Magufuli, the late President Magufuli said, it will give jobs. Of course, it will give some jobs of people cutting down the trees, and the local people will be hired to cut those trees and do the labor job, just like the Indians were brought to Uganda and Kenya to build the railroad. But look at the damage to the environment. Secondly, how much money is it going to cost to build that pipeline, those hundreds and hundreds of miles, to get it to the coast whereby they can put it on ships and send it to Houston, Texas, or Delaware to be refined into oil, then bring that oil back to Uganda for you,
And
the
sell it
border
on.
driver or the taxi driver, to buy that oil at a high price, which is set by the Muzungu who took it away from you. That doesn't make sense. The money being spent without looking at the environmental damage where this pipeline is being built, the money that is being spent in building that pipeline and protecting it, because you're going to have to protect it for many, many years to come against vandals and any other political saboteurs. Why don't you use
A
that money to
refiner.
build a refinery in Hoima? I can bet you the amount of money being spent on building that pipeline from Hoima to Dar es Salaam or to Bagamoyo or Tanga is going to be equal, if not more, than the cost of building a medium-sized refinery in Uganda. Since Muzungu doesn't want you to industrialize, he's bullshitting these African stupid leaders and tell them, okay, we will give you some money, we'll give you $20 million to sign this contract. Let us build this pipeline, take the oil, so that Africa can perpetually be a source of raw materials for the Muzungu economies to grow and keeping Africans down. That is what we are opposed to. We are
And
opposed to making Africa a source of raw materials, raw crude oil like this. And who is going to pay for the price of that pipeline? They are going to tell you the World Bank is going to finance it, and who is going to bear the burden of repaying? Uganda. And what is Uganda gaining out of it? Nothing.
nothing.
Nothing. Sometimes I even wonder when you have people like this man who just died, who was what governor of the Central Bank of Uganda, a graduate of London School of Economics. He was so stupid that even people like me who studied small economics compared to his can see better. Why do we allow? These are the people who should be kicking in the butt every damn day because they are the ones screwing up our country. And Mzungu is sitting there laughing his head off to the bank. We have wrong people in leadership positions, and this is the time to be serious. We cannot develop Africa by dancing all night long. That is not going to cut the cake. We have to start using our brains, and we have plenty of them. I personally talk to so many Ugandans, and sometimes I even wonder, where are these people? They are such intelligent, such a committed Ugandans, and yet we have pumpkins sitting there in Uganda, messing up our country every day. Now, you people listening to us and watching us, Yes, you might say, why is Kintu so upset? Oh, damn right I am upset. And I have a damn good reason to be upset. I can't tolerate this kind of nonsense. And I beg you, ladies and gentlemen, let's get serious. Let's get rid of this regime and put the right people in the right places to manage our country. And I'm glad this pipeline is going to be closed. They should close it, ban it, and, and get rid of it and clean it out of our memory, because it is
Mm,
dangerous to our country. It is dangerous to the development of Uganda. It is dangerous for our African spirit of self-determination.
mm.
I think I can stop
And
there because I'm so upset.
no, and there is a reason here to be upset, because we're now heading into the third century, and the story is the same, where our nations are still being used as resources for raw materials, and we're not denied the chance to industrialize, but as you call them, the pumpkins in office seated in our nations, deny this opportunity for their people to industrialize, to build nation, to nation build, which was going to bring me to my next question. I guess for us in the audience to really understand how vital industrialization is to building nation. Because yes, we're all encouraged. Growing up, we used to be encouraged to be patriotic and fight for your country, and that relies on you intrinsically loving your country. It's something you're born with, but that does not build a nation. But if you can help us expand how, because without nation, then we cannot reach Pan Africanism and secure the whole African continent. Because it's also vital, as we have had in our conversations, for not only Ugandans to be able to refine oil, but also all oil producing countries on the African continent to join hands. Because that's the only way that we will have strength in within our numbers to be able to determine on the market, and that what that will do for not only those African countries but Africa in general. So how vital, so that people understand how vital it is for us, that the next stage now for us is to actually industrialize, because we have until we start manufacturing our own raw materials, then we will see a difference in our sovereignty. If that question makes sense, how, I guess my question is, how do all these things work hand in hand? Because we can talk about them separately, but until people start to see them as things that are intertwined and are supposed to be had together in order to get us to where we need to be or want to be or perceive ourselves to be.
Yes, there is no country which can develop
Mm,
economically, politically, and socially without industrialization.
mm,
It just doesn't work that way.
mm,
You have to industrialize in order to develop economically, period. There is no shortcut to that. Now, if a country is going to remain poor, that
mm,
means it is going to remain as a source of raw materials for the rich countries. And that is
mm,
what we as Africans have to say no.
mhm,
Not only say no, hell no. We have that ended with colonialism. Yes, they screwed us during the colonial time, but not anymore. But when I see African leaders perpetuating the same colonial mentality of making Africa a source of raw materials, we talked about this, and I think we're going to talk about it more when we come to talk about economic development of our country. They
mm,
built the railways as a way of siphoning off materials, agriculture, and the raw materials from the inland to the coast so that they can ship them to their countries. Now, if you remember, those of you who may remember, Nigeria was a major source of uh, peanuts or ground nuts, as we call them at home. And with the ground nuts, they were able to supply cooking oil production in Britain. For the French countries, the oil producing, cooking oil production, and the soap made in Marseille, they relied upon palm oil from the West African colonies because they don't have palm oil in Europe. They were depending upon the colonies, and they took all the palm oil and made a very, very lucrative cooking oil and soap production, particularly in the area of Marseille. And we know this. Why do we continue supporting this kind of nonsense? And when I see African leaders closing their eyes to this kind of injustice, simply because the Muzungu has given them an envelope of 10 million, and they shut up and they let this exploitation go on, that is unacceptable. We, the generation of Africans who see better, want to stop this nonsense. Now, when it comes to oil, if you look at different countries, how they handled this issue of exploitation, it leads me to look at the country like Venezuela. Venezuela was being exploited like Nigeria is being exploited right now. They turned around and said, hell no. They stopped the exploitation. They built their own refineries, and they built their own distribution company called Citgo. Those of you who live in the United States, I don't know if Citgo has branches in Canada.
No, I don't think so.
Citgo became the distribution company of Venezuela. And they enticed one of the Kennedys to be their spokesman in the United States. So they refine their oil, they distribute it at their own price. They do not wait for the other Muzungus to dictate to them what price they should sell their oil to. And by so doing, they gave their people jobs, they expanded their income. I do not have the exact figure, but you can check this and find out, because this is all public information, and I don't want to give wrong figures. But they expanded their GNP exponentially, expanded employment, they controlled their oil, and they set prices which a local person should buy oil at. In other words, if we refine our oil in Uganda, we could probably say that a Ugandan, whether you are in Arua or you are in Iganga or you are in Masaka, you will pay, say, $2 a gallon. Okay? That's it. Now, when it comes to exporting the surplus, of course, we would know how many gallons do we need every day in Uganda. We have people who are learned, not these people who are just dancing all night long or drinking waragi. We have people who are learned. They will do the statistics and they give us a figure that Uganda needs, say, 20 million gallons a day. We could say, okay, we reserve, say, double that, make it 40 million gallons a day. That is for consumption in Uganda. The rest we export. But when we come to exporting it, we export it following the ongoing international price. Now, chances are the world market for refined oil is $6 a gallon. Okay, we'll export it at $6 a gallon. When we make this kind of money, we can finance any development project we want in our country. Venezuela did that. Then Venezuela realized that we are being screwed by United States through the so-called Latin American Development Bank, which is, by the way, right here in Washington, D.C., one block away from the White House. They said no, because we borrowing from I think they call it Inter-American Development Bank. That's the title. They said borrowing from that development bank, the Americans are really controlling us by the tail. We better set up our own uh, Latin American Development Bank. He persuaded some countries and put a sizable amount of money in the so-called our own Latin American Development Bank. When they started looking at themselves as Latin Americans, then people's consciousness started realizing that we should never be committed to kissing somebody's behind
mm,
across the ocean. And I remember one of the statements Hugo Chavez used. He said, if you people continue believing that Spain is our mother country, which mother takes a piece of food from his child's mouth and eat it herself, which they have been doing for centuries. So you notice that the, the new Latin American Development Bank, funded by the seed money which they generated out of controlling their own oil production, processing, and marketing, that bank is now very, very strong. And it is financing a lot of development projects in Latin American countries that joined it, which
mm,
the so-called American controlled development bank would not have accepted to finance. And with that same awareness, you are seeing that same awareness spilling out into the political arena. For
mm,
example, just recently, Colombia had elections and they
mm,
elected the first real black person as vice president.
mm.
You couldn't have talked about that 30, 40 years ago because everybody had to have Spanish blood or European immigrant blood to be in a position of leadership. They were able to break ties with the so-called School of the Americas, where they were training South American military officers to go back and overthrow any regime that America didn't want. They are now becoming self-sufficient with self-awareness. And by the way, don't rule this out. People like you, Desire, who are much younger than me, one day you're going to see Brazil, Colombia, Honduras, El Salvador, Venezuela, of course, and all these Latin American countries led by black people. Because, take for example, in Brazil,
Yeah,
80% of the population is black.
Africans, yeah.
But right now, 100% of the leadership is white. So you are going to see this transformation, and it's going to be beautiful because this
Mm,
self awareness is expanding and spilling. And the black people in Latin America are now beginning to see themselves as Africans in the Americas.
mm.
But everything has to
And
start somewhere.
and I think that that awareness and what's happening to Africans in other continents is also important to us Africans. And also indigenous people in Latin America are are heading the conversations. Now the conversations are more based around land and securing resources and not based off of an external intruder and their exploitation. I think those are also just different things that have been happening around Latin America that we can borrow from and we ought to borrow from. That's why very adamant to all indigenous nations to be returned to indigenous Ugandans. That's a very important step of the process. Because unless the land is returned back to its indigenous people, it will always be abused and exploited. It is the indigenous people within that certain area or region who have taken care of that land to look like even how it looks like today. But with that being said, The studio link is on the screen. We're going to go into our last segment, and we're going to come and talk about, because UNN, we came here to really debunk confusion. So when propaganda and confusion starts, it's our role and our duty to come here and try to, what's the word? When a fire starts and you step on it so that it doesn't spread. And in our last segment, we're going to come up and talk about just the propaganda technique that's being taken by the government. Because right now, Museveni's illegitimate government is blaming the EU for economic racism. And that is just a term that is being thrown out there so that we as Africans feel like, oh, now white people are being racist. But this pipeline is not really about economic racism and its rejection. It has been grounded in activism of African people for the environment. That's the only, like, the EU wouldn't have decided to side with Africans if the pressure was not there from African environmentalists who have spent time and hours and are also in jails in Uganda because of their activism. So we're going to come back and talk about the last segment, and then also take calls and messages from your end. So the studio line is on the screen. We'll go for a short break and then come back for our last segment. Thank you for sticking with us.
Bawansolo nga bakuba olukiiko lwabwe okusala entotto engeri gye banaasobola okweggyako omugwira wa mpologoma eyabalumba mu kibira kyabwe neyefuula kabaka waabwe ewatali yadde olukusa okuva gye bali. Wampologoma yajjanga mununuzi okubataasa ku mmese ezaababbiranga ebinyeebwa byabwe, kubanga yabagamba nti ewaabwe gy'asibuka bakugu nnyo mu kutega emmese eza buli kika. Era bo ewaabwe omwana azaalibwa n'akamaso mu ngalo. Era oyo yenna alemererwa bamuzaaluka mu kika kyabwe ekyaba Wampologoma. Kyokka beerabira okumubuuza emmere gy'alya n'omusala gwe yali yeetaaga. Baalabira awo nga bannaye batandika okubula ku kyalo omu ku omu. Baakizuula luvannyuma nnyo nti Wampologoma ye yali ababwebwena. Baasalawo beekumeekume wamu basala entotto engeri gye banaasobola okweggyako sirwajja okwoota, okukkakkana nga buli omu afunye obuvunaanyizibwa era nga buli omu afunye n'ekitundu kyalina okukwata basobole okumegguza Wampologoma. Era baamuwangula nga newankubadde baasooka kumutya, kuba Wampologoma yali w'amaanyi nnyo ate ng'atiisa. Uganda Federal Consultative Council lwe lukiiko lwa bannayuganda abasazeewo okwegatta ewamu bateeseze eggwanga lyabwe okusobola okwenunula nga bayita mu nfuga eya federal. Naawe beegatteko. Weeyeza okusabako ku email ya ufcc@getunn.com.
Dr. Andrew Takome Kaira was born on 30th January 1945 in a small town known as Nkokonjeru in the Buganda region. He is regarded as one of Uganda's forgotten heroes, a true nationalist whose love for his country sent him to an early grave. He was a lawyer and professor and had many accomplishments since 1971, with many of his accolades attained from his education and political experiences, both nationally and internationally. Significant is his doctoral dissertation titled Condoism in Uganda, which has awarded him an internationally recognized terminology now used in criminology. He joined several political organizations, including Uganda Freedom Movement (UFM), which he was the leader, the Uganda National Liberation Front (UNLF), later joining the National Resistance Army (NRA), which had once been his organization's rival. Dr. Kayira is regarded as one of Uganda's forgotten heroes, a true nationalist whose love for his country led to his premature death. He was just 46 years old when he was assassinated on 6 March 1987 during a dinner with his close friends and 3 female acquaintances. His killers have never been brought to justice.
Welcome back from that short break. You're on the tower at UNN, and we're discussing how Uganda can actually benefit from the extraction of its oil. The studio line is on the screen, and we will take questions, comments after this, which is our last segment. So, Senior, before we went into break, I wanted us to talk a little bit about this because recently, I think it was, let me not think and actually get the factuals on this. It was the EU at the EU's Parliament that international community members were advised not to partake in this, since a third of that pipeline is actually going to go through the basin of Naluwale, which is widely known as Lake Victoria. And the damage that this pipeline can do is a lot, considering not only the distance, but also the landmarks that it's going to go through. So they were advised not to opt for this and maybe find a different path or a different route. But the Speaker of Parliament, the current Speaker of Parliament, came out and said these words. It also about the EU intercepting with the building of the pipeline. He said it also seeks to deny Ugandans and East Africans the benefits and opportunities from the oil and gas sector. This represents the highest form of economic racism against developing countries. So I wanted us to debunk this in order, because a lot of things that we're facing now are out of confusion of our own people leading us astray by basing their arguments on sentiments. Because yes, there is a rift between the West world and the African world, and it has been there a long time. But this is not a situation where economic racism is happening, but it's rather a situation that has actually been caused by activists on the ground and their partners in fighting against the building of this pipeline for environmental reasons. So I guess why this topic was brought, so that we understand how the enemy actually works. Because even throughout Museveni's regime, he has looked for certain points of popularity by positioning himself anti-imperialist, which he isn't, or by framing himself as a pan-Africanist, which he also isn't, just so that we as local people think that one of our own is fighting for us. It's the same thing that is being done here by the Speaker of Parliament, by always using the first thing and calling a red herring and saying, oh, this is economic racism, but it's not. It's the efforts of the people on the ground who, for many years, have been against the building of this pipeline or the extraction of this oil because of all the disadvantages that have come ever since the government got involved. So I guess my question to you is, how do we debunk and know when, not only know when our leaders are leading us astray, but also to separate situations from, to be able to see situations for what they are instead of what they're being presented. Because here you have a situation of the EU where it is, of course, the EU doesn't have our best interests at heart, never. So it has to do, and the EU is leaning into environmentalism, and that this is against the environment. And then you have these useless African leaders talking about how this is economic racism, and you have just two different ideological views bumping into each other. But us as the people or the masses, where do we start to understand this for our benefit and see where we fit and position ourselves there to move forward ideologically, I guess?
Thank you. Well, first of all, I want to say bravo to everybody who is involved in defending our environment. I think
Mm,
they are the victors and anybody else is a loser. This
mm,
war has been won by the environments. They have worked very hard and very diligently and systematically to make sure that this pipeline does not come to reality. It is not economic racism. The Europeans have been
mm.
economically racist forever.
For a long
We know
time.
that. They are not going to change. You are not going to change
Mm,
them. And
mm,
but for the speaker or anybody in the Museveni's regime to make to utter such a statement, to me, I don't have words for that because
mm,
I call them pumpkins. Maybe worse than that, if I could use a crude language. But what do you expect out of them? They have no
mm,
brains. They have no common sense. I remember one of them even said, "Our government is uh, is proud of maintaining security in the country." I think it was that pumpkin, the so-called president of. Anyway, they are all the same. The speaker herself, look at her and listen to what she says. There is no description that fits her. She's just like she's a trash, to be honest about it. She's just a trash
oh,
woman. So I don't
just to
expect
correct,
anything
it was,
out of her.
just to correct,
Um,
it was the deputy speaker. It was Thomas who came out and said the statement, but same
they are
mouthpiece.
all the same stock. They are all the same stock. You can't be deputy speaker unless you are you are trash. I mean, an intelligent person wouldn't be in that position in this regime. Look at the top
Mm,
down to the bottom. They are all the same. A bunch of
mm,
trash. Now, Ugandans should be aware that
mm,
these trash people cannot say anything that makes sense. They are complaining because they were expecting to eat big if this pipeline is materializes. And now seeing
mm,
this pipeline being stopped, they are just looking at a loss of personal income. How many projects do we have on record whereby they have eaten 100% of the budgeted money, or maybe
mm,
the list is half of what has been budgeted, and they eat it, or money donated by foreign countries, they eat it, and that's what has made them so rich that they could talk in terms of millions contributing, of course, distributed among their own clansmen, contributing to the purchase of an aeroplane for some woman to go take care of the cow shit at their kraal somewhere. So, I mean, nothing surprises me. The European Union made that decision not so much for the love of Africa, as we do feel the love of our continent or our countries. No, they have a different reason. You are going to find that who are going to be the ones manning or running that pipeline, maybe it's not one of their countries, or they are not going to get enough, or rather they are not going to steal enough out of it. So they put pressure to make sure that they screw it up, and they have done it. But in the end, we are beneficiaries. I'll give you an example. During slave trade, the Portuguese, using of course British ships, almost depleted the territory of present-day Angola of people. Now, those of you who don't remember the history, we had one called the Congo Empire under Queen Nzenga. That empire contained the present-day Angola, Congo Kinshasa, and the Congo Brazzaville. It was called One Congo Empire, and it had diplomatic relations with Spain and Rome. Now, when they defeated Queen Nzenga, they divided that territory into three controlled areas. Angola, they gave it to the Portuguese. Congo Kinshasa, or by then Leopoldville, was given to the Belgians, and the Congo Brazza was given to the French. Now, when they started buying slaves in the 14th century, Angola almost got depleted of indigenous African people. Now, what stopped it? The Portuguese who had settled in that territory started complaining. They said, wait a minute, we can't even find anybody to be a servant at my house, to take care of my garden, to wash my dishes and wash my clothes, because they had no washing machine then. Now, if you take all these black people, we shall have no native slaves to use at around our houses. So they stopped buying slaves from that territory, not because they were against slavery, but because of a different reason. They were running of native people who were going to work as porters at their own new homesteads. So they shifted the slave trade from that corridor of Africa to this present-day Cameroon, Benin, all the way to Nigeria. So people could say something or do something good for a different reason, and then it comes out to be good for many other good reasons, which they never intended. So the Europeans have a different purpose for stopping this pipeline, but their purpose is not the same as ours. We must remember that. They have a different reason. They may say it or they may not say it, but eventually we're going to know why they stopped this thing. My suspicion is there was a discrepancy in who is going to benefit from this pipeline. If that discrepancy is real, they are going to stop it. Not for the same reason. I am advocating that they should stop it because it is against my belief that Africa has to industrialize. Now, someone else is saying, let us stop this pipeline because it is dangerous to the environment. Good and well, that's a partner to me. But eventually, we are going to reach the same conclusion. We're going to team up with these people, and we are going to build a refinery of this oil in Uganda, and hopefully within my lifetime. And I don't have many years left anyway, but we're going to see. We're going to see. And when we do have that, we are all going to sit at a round table and they play the drums and they dance and they eat and they drink and they celebrate that now we have reached our goal. We are for industrialization. We are for the protection of the environment. We are for the growth of our country. And we are for regaining our country, which has been taken over by Ibatusi. Now, also, it is important to remember when people start putting pressure consistently, they reach their goal. You all remember listening to us. Some of us started talking about Ubatusi taking over our country, and we are called tribalists. It's amazing that everybody is talking about it now. And not many people are giving credit to those who started advocating this, or rather bringing this catastrophe to light. It's amazing that I will quote this man, our friend Lumbuye. He never wanted to talk about it, but now he's one of the people talking about Batusi taking over our country. There is another famous Ugandan who cannot even say the word Batusi, but he's always saying, those men have taken over our country. Those men, abasajja abo ensi bagitutte, abasajja abo ensi bagiwamba. He will never mention the word the Tutsis. And of course, he has a good reason. And that's the man you are all following blindly, that you have an elected president when you have nothing in your hands. He will never mention the word Batusi. But he always says, he admits abasajja abo, those men have taken over our country. You ask him, are those men Nigerians or Cameroonians or South Africans? No, he will never mention the word Batusi. Anyway, let us keep the pressure, whatever it is, you're going to see the results coming your way as soon as possible.
Thank you for that, Senior Chetu. And I think if we want to that's the thing, we can't stop putting pressure because we're the only ones as a nation, as the people who are going to actually build the leadership that's going to deliver things like industrialization after we make ourselves conscious of where we need to go. We're the only ones who can now then, not only us, but us, all of us as a people collectively put pressure to change the kind of leadership we've been given to lead, to just follow people blindly who have no plan or no basis. But with that being said, we're going to start taking in questions or comments from members in the audience. And before we do that, so just to give us a little bit of ample time to be able to send those in, we're going to go for a quick short break. And then when we come back, we're only answering questions and comments. And if there isn't any, we'll come back with our closing statements for today's show. I'm going to ask the producer to take us to a short break as we organize ourselves to come back and start replying to those questions or commentary that are coming through. And then we'll be closing our show for today very soon. But as the producer gets us organized, Senior Chintu, what I found very interesting, I still have to find that paper, but there were 3 companies that are associated with this particular project. One is a British company, the other one is a French company. So the British reached out to the French, and then they all did not have enough resources, and they reached out to China. But with what's happening in the world right now on oil and the East coming together with Russia and China, it's very interesting that it's within this time window that this all is happening. But until, as you said, only the future will reveal the real reasons as to why such a move like this is being made. But I know a Chinese company was also supposed to collaborate with a French and a British company with the extraction of the oil in Lake Albert.
Yes, when you look at the geopolitics there, you're going to find that there are so many underlying dynamics when it comes to China dealing with the Western, or rather
Mm,
imperialist countries. Uh, there is a new awareness among them that they are viewing China as enemy number one. So I cannot see Chinese peacefully collaborating with the French or British um, imperialist companies in this kind of a project, because they know that down the road, the Chinese are going to outwit them and they are going to come out losers. So screw it. That's the conclusion they can do. Just kill it. Let us all lose. But eventually, they are going to turn around and manipulate these pumpkins we have in positions of power. And you're going to see something different coming out, because they are not going to accept a total loss forever. No, they
mm,
want to control that oil and they want to steal it at any price. Oh, by the way, talk about stealing. There was something on the social media that circulated a few weeks ago of a little kid saying that the kid had trouble with the teacher when she answered the question, why are the pyramids in Egypt? And the kid said, they were too heavy for the British to steal them. That's why they remained in Egypt. So you can see, even a little kid in elementary school knew that the British were the biggest thieves. They can steal anything, but they couldn't steal the pyramids. They were too damn heavy for them to carry. The need of Cleopatra was stolen, as you know. So
yeah.
we have to be on guard as Africans, because we are dealing with the people who are professional thieves and they have been practicing that skill for centuries. We have to protect ourselves constantly and consistently. We cannot afford to take a nap when it comes to defending our African interests. There is no time for napping.
Mm. Well, that is true. Right now, we're going to go on a short break and then we're going to come back and reply to any comments or messages. So we'll go on a short break and we'll be right back. But as you said, we don't even have time to take a nap because the wicked do not rest. That is something we must always remember.
Why do we need a federal system of governance in Uganda? And what is federalism? Federal is a system of governance. It's not about getting rid of the central government. It's not about party politics. It's not about multi-partisan or absence of it. It's not about religious differences. It's not about tribalism. It is not for the benefit of Buganda alone. It's not about monarchism. It's not about land or dispossessing people from land. It is not about supremacy of one region over another or others. It's about helping the central government to provide services more efficiently and provide more effective development to the people. It's about sharing power and responsibilities between the central government and regional governments. Federalism is about providing more prosperity, more wealth, more feeling of belonging and participation in governance by marginalized and non-marginalized people. The federal system of government minimizes possibilities of waging war against the central government. It minimizes internal acts of terrorism and discontent against the central government. It has inbuilt safeguards that ensure uniform growth for all regions of the country, and additional measures to make sure that the marginalized or less developed regions of the country can catch up through the system of equalization grants and affirmative action programs. This ensures that the regions with greater income and development contribute a percentage of their earnings to the developed areas which may be less developed. It should be noted that federalism, though different from decentralization, does not contradict or exclude decentralization. The two systems can and should coexist and complement each other at the regional level. Advocating federal does not mean or seek to get rid of decentralization from regional tier, nor does it mean getting rid of district MPs, LC leaders, or other regional government officials. To learn more about federalism, register and join UFCC at www.ufcc.uk. Lwaki twetaaga enkola eya federo mu Uganda? Era federo kye ki? Federo nkola ya nfuga, si kya kugoba gavumenti eya wakati, si bya bufuzi bya bibiina, si kya bibiina bingi oba obutabaawo, si kya njawulo mu ddiini, si kya kusosola mu bika, si lwa kugasa Buganda yokka, si kya Bwakabaka, si kya ttaka oba okugoba abantu ku ttaka, si kya kusukkuluma kw'ekitundu ekimu ku kirala oba ebirala. Kikwata ku kuyamba gavumenti eya wakati okuwa obuweereza obulungi n'okuwa abantu enkulaakulana ennungi. Kikwata kugabana obuyinza n'obuvunaanyizibwa wakati wa gavumenti eya wakati ne gavumenti ez'ebitundu. Federo ekwata ku kuwa obugagga obusingawo, okuwulira okusingawo nti bali wamu n'okwetaba mu nfuga y'abantu abasuuliddwa ku bbali n'abatasuuliddwa ku bbali. Enkola ya gavumenti eya federo ekendeeza ku busobozi bw'okukuba olutalo ku gavumenti eya wakati. Kikendeeza ku bikolwa eby'obutujju eby'omunda n'obutali bumativu eri gavumenti eya wakati. Erimu obukuumi obuzimbibwamu obukakasa enkulaakulana ey'enjawulo eri ebitundu byonna eby'eggwanga, n'ebintu ebirala okulaba n'ebitundu eby'eggwanga ebisuuliddwa ku bbali oba ebitakulaakulana nnyo bisobola okukwatagana nga biyita mu nkola y'okugaba ensimbi ez'okwenkanankana n'enteekateeka z'okukakasa. Bino bikakasa nti ebitundu ebirina ensimbi ennyingi n'enkulaakulana biwaayo ebitundu ku 100 ebyenfuna byabwe ebyakanyibwako nga tebinnabaawo mu nkulaakulana y'ebitundu ebiyinza okuba nga tebinnakulaakulana nnyo. Kinaamanyibwa nti federo wadde nga ya njawulo ku decentralization tekootana oba okuggyawo decentralization. Enkola zombi zisobola era zirina okubeera awamu era nga zijulizigana ku mutendera gw'ekitundu. Okulwanirira federo tekitegeeza oba okunoonya okugoba, okugabanya obuyinza okuva mu mitendera gw'ekitundu, era tekitegeeza kugoba babaka ba disitulikiti, abakulembeze ba LC oba abakungu ba gavumenti z'ebitundu ebirala. Okuyiga ebisingawo ku federo weewandiise ng'ogenda ku www.ufcc.uk.
Welcome back from that short break. Right now, we're going to look at questions and comments coming from our members in the audience, those who have been watching us and listening to us over the radio. Firstly, by the way, Senior, I found out, yes, it was 3 companies. Just for people who want to do research on this, the first company is a London-based company called Tuluwa Oil. That's the one that's referred to a lot. And then the second company is a French company, Total. And then the third company is Chinese National Offshore Oil Company. Those are the 3 companies that would take a third of this exploration of oil on Lake Albert that were in charge of it. For people interested in further research on the topic, and I recommend a paper. Maniac. So with that being said, we'll go forward towards the end of our program. First, we'll listen to a message from Muna Busiro from Uganda.
Good evening, Desire and Pokino. I'm Muna Busiro. Thanks for the program. Mostly me, I was much more annoyed by the parliamentarians, the so-called politicians, who do enlighten us or the public of these issues, whom we think they know better than us. I saw them trying also to accuse the European Union of entering into affairs of Uganda. And I wonder, these people would debate the issues raised by the EU, because one was the environment, secondly was land grabbing without paying people. The third one, the contract itself is not fair. And these people, Museveni refused them to even debate this contract. This contract led even to the killing of Nebanda and the poisoning of Chanjo, their fellow parliamentarians, and they look on. But I saw everyone coming into the camera wants to show that he knows anything, something to tell the public. Because if you ask these people, even if they know what the whole contract says, they don't know. Apart from telling us maybe we have 5%, do these people even know what does the contract talk about the byproducts? They don't know. Surely we need to fight as hard as possible to take back our country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Munabisiro, for being on the program and for sending your message to us. I will yield the floor to Senior Chintu to further comment on what's been said.
Well, Munabisiro, thank you for that comment. I really don't have much to add on when you are talking about those guys who are sitting in the Uganda parliament, because they are not there to represent Uganda. They are there to represent Museveni's interests. And of course, you know, they are eating very comfortably. That's why they are dancing and singing and celebrating and having a good time. If you are earning those kind of millions they earn, I think, did they say 50 million or 5 million, whatever amount, is sure more than what I can earn. But the only thing I can say is to remind you of Mr. Jakana Naduli at one of the shows on this channel, when they asked him about those parliamentarians. His answer was very simple. He said, don't bother me with a question regarding those parliamentarians, because he called them those in Kodomari in Uganda. He said, I have no time to answer questions about those guys because he called them a Kodomari. And now, given your comment, I think you may have to revert to Naduli's comment, and I leave you with that.
And for the next message, this is coming from Nachimbugwe from Ireland.
Good evening, viewers. How are you? All viewers of UNN TV. Seven is very aggressive and said oil is his. And Uganda is independent. No other country can interfere about oil or fuel in Uganda. He said he's going to drag them out. I don't think. And they say if they want to take oil, they will suffer the consequence from him. I love you all, viewers. Continue all people working on UNN and all the team. You are most welcome. Thanks.
Thank you so much for sending in your message. And thank you so much for watching and being on the show up to now. I'll yield the floor to Senior Chain too.
Well, we are already aware that Museveni is a pathological liar. We are already aware that Museveni is the biggest thief within Uganda. We are aware that Museveni is not a Ugandan. We are aware about everything to do with Museveni. Now, we have found out that oil was discovered in 1920, and in 1936, the British started digging, getting that oil. Now, if Museveni says this is his oil, he has to prove to me that he was born in 1910, so that by 1920, he was a little boy who discovered it when he was herding goats or cows. But if that's not true, then I think he should shut up his potato box and go back to his kiraro and take care of his cows. That oil belongs to Uganda, and it belongs to Ugandans, period. Not to Banyarwanda, not to Batusi, period. And it is the Ugandans who have a say in how that oil should be drilled, how it should be processed, how it should be marketed. And then they are the ones who must own whatever the proceeds that come out of it, and must be the beneficiaries of whatever that has to do with that oil discovery, which, as we have now found out, was discovered in 1920. By the way, Uganda was there, and Uganda is there today. It's ours. Now he can go to his expensive mobile toilet and whip his head off. That's all I can say to Museveni. Go and whip your head off. You have nothing to do with this oil, my dear. It's ours, period.
And may I add, take them to court on what grounds? We must understand as Ugandans, the only reason why members of parliament and Museveni are acting like this, because it is the West that was going to give them money to build that pipeline. Without the West, they have no funds and resources to go ahead with the project. As Senior said, they're going to lose a lot of money because of this, to continue terrorizing us, to continue terrorizing the people. As many of you might remember, if you've been on UNN long enough, you have watched a program by Mr. Kabuleta earlier on, and what was happening in Hoima, and what happened when they were exploring the oil there, or when they wanted to start packing it and putting it out, how many people had to die in Uganda, what do we call it? When, the bars that they use, mtaimbwa, by 6 p.m. just to alert people in the region. Like the amount of terrorizing that this government has done in the regions where this oil is found is immense. And if the EU was to give and let go of this money into this project, more terrorizing would happen. So that's what they're angry about. They won't have enough money to terrorize or exploit or steal from the people of Bunyoro. That's what they're up in bits about. But he has no grounds to take anyone to court. Anyway, this is from Raymond from Germany.
Thank you very much, Senior Major Chintu and Desire, for the show. My name is Raymond, calling in from Germany. Yeah, as regards this oil pipeline, I think one of the main funders for Total was going to be Deutsche Bank, because if I may not be mistaken, Total has a 70% stake in the pipeline, and Uganda has either 15%. I'm not so sure the precise details, but if I may not be mistaken, the biggest shareholder in the pipeline is Total Energies with 62%. Then Tanzania owns 15%. The Chinese Sinopec own 8%, and Uganda as well 15%. So Uganda and Tanzania as nations own a total of 30%. Sinopec 8 and Total 62. So on paper, one would wonder the actual impact and cost that Uganda and Tanzania are going to face, yet they only own 15%,
Mm-hmm.
So logically, it doesn't really add up. How can you own only 15% as a country and you give up so many kilometers or miles of land to be destroyed environmental wise? People's lives displaced. Going back to the fact of Deutsche Bank being one of the funders of Total and then they pulled out, I think something did not look really straight from the word go when they look at maybe the profit sharing agreements of this pipeline, and then maybe they have now been trying to seek for other funders, because I don't think the Chinese can invest into something where their company only has an 8% share. You get what I mean? Yes. This is a blow to that regime in place, because going way back to the colonial times, there is a huge reason as to why this oil was not explored. You also need to look at those facts, because the British who were there knew the existence of that oil, but there is a huge reason as to why it was not explored. So maybe they basically have their own ideologies of wanting to keep us down there. And for us, we shall always be happy, because just imagine other financial resources falling into the arms of a cruel, barbaric dictator. What would that mean? Buying of more guns, getting more funds to continue the torture and capture of persons, So what I mean is that at the end of the day, we stand as Ugandans to benefit from whichever way in which this project stalls, until when the right persons come in place and then they make the right deals that benefit indigenous Ugandans. That was my insight. Thank you very much. Secondly, I'm sorry to come back. I think the whole reason might be confusing, because a few months ago, maybe 1 month and a half, we saw the Russian foreign minister visiting a couple of nations in Africa, and those nations that he visited had oil potential, like Angola, which is already an oil producer, and some other, I think it was Congo or Brazzaville or something like that as well, plus Uganda. After which the U.S. ambassador also, United Nations, U.S. Representative to the United Nations also came to Uganda and said that they still need Museveni. So we wondered, if they still need Museveni, why should we be voting? Putting that aside, I think maybe they came to realize that this guy is playing either way. He plays east and west, So they're trying to cut maybe his funding or something. I'm just trying to be thinking open-minded. I really don't know, but maybe that could also be a reason. And please do not forget that other money that is into the oil exploration business that you're talking about is actually ideally or book-wise it's from London, but the representatives in Uganda, I think, is a daughter of Sam Kutesa, because she was in Parliament of recent. So book-wise, it's from London, but you know what that means when the actual representatives in Uganda are sons of a particular person, you know. So there is no way under this the sun that the Lord sets, the Lord helps to rise, that this saga will ever go on. And these people will die without tasting the fruits of their.
Thank you so much, Raymond, for those comments. I will go ahead and then yield the floor to Senior Chintu.
Thank you, gentlemen, for that comment. I think you have added more light to the question. To respond to your question, your concern that how could countries like Tanzania and Uganda give up so much land when their interest is, you said, 15%? Well, first of all, I got to say, if you are stupid, you don't even have to own 5% or 15%. If you are stupid, you can give up even the entire piece of land because of your stupidity. And this is what we are getting out of these pumpkins sitting in the office in Entebbe. Second, you have mentioned that Sam Kutesa's daughter is involved in this whole thing. Yes, now we have to look at the geopolitics. Anybody with the sense will understand that this region, the Great Lakes region, is a very, very volatile region. There is no way you are going to escape from a volatile explosion in the region, given the way it is being run today. It is running, if it was a stool, it is a stool standing on one leg, but a stool to be comfortable has to stand on 3 legs. There is no way you are going to avoid a very, very volatile and explosive situation down the road. Anybody in these capitals where I am and everywhere else knows it, and they are expecting it. Now, look at the nature of this pipeline. If this pipeline is built in a potentially volatile region, chances of sabotaging it are almost 98%.
So high.
So high. If it was low, it would be 80%, but that is still high. There is no way you are going to protect this pipeline safely to operate for the next 10 years. There is no way. Because within the next 10 years, you are going to see an explosion in this region. This region cannot continue being dominated by that ethnic imposters of Batusi. And I'm talking about them dominating Rwanda, Uganda, Eastern Congo, Southern Sudan, Burundi, and now Kenya. And Tanzania is still in question. There is no way. Sooner or later, it is a guaranteed thing, just as a pregnant woman. No matter what you do, after 9 months, that baby is going to come out. And it is going to happen. So anybody who is interested in investment strategies can tell you, don't put your dollars in that damn thing because you're going to end up losing it. So from the economic point of view, you cannot ignore the dynamics of that region, which are very scary. It is going to explode, whether you like it or not. And anybody who is investing is looking at all those factors. And by the way, you got to understand these people have experts bringing in all kinds of information, analyzing everything before they put their signatures on a paper. They know what is going to happen. They cannot, I mean, when you look at that picture of that pipeline stretching all the way from Uganda through Tanzania, you cannot protect that pipeline. No way. Now, here in America, where I am, we have natural gas being piped from Houston, Texas, from Louisiana, all the way to Boston and Maine. But you know what? That pipeline is underground. And where they have what we call booster pumps, I know there is one here in Rockville. I've been in that area, by the way, where they have the booster pump because they have to have booster pumps in so many, so many distances. Lord have mercy. If you visit that location where they have the booster pump, you can't even step there. It is as guarded and protected as if it was a military installation. You don't see soldiers standing there like you would see them at Kabalagala in Uganda. No. But they have the protection of that booster pump, whereby even to get through the gates, not one gate, by the way, through a couple of gates, you have to be the right person who is going to go there and do what they expect you to do. And if any trespasser tries to get in there, the signals get off real quick and you are grabbed real quickly. And they ask you, what the hell are you doing here? And that pipeline, by the way, is a huge pipeline. Imagine pumping natural gas from Houston all the way through Washington, D.C., New York, and Boston. Lord have mercy, it's a huge thing, but it is underground. This one, when you saw that pipeline, as we showed it on this program, even a giraffe could come and kick it because it's right there in the open. Look at it. I can bet you a couple of elephants would put their tusks in that thing and pum, you might see it breaking. And we do not have the technology yet to stop the flow of that oil spilling all over that place. By the time we get it stopped, there will be a lake of crude oil all over that environment. So these investors, they are not fools. That could be another reason why they said, no, we can't protect it. We are not going to invest in it.
And this brings us to our next message. This is from the US.
Good evening, good afternoon. Thank you so much, Desire, for the program. Thank you so much, our senior Remigius Chinto, for the program. I was wondering, always I'm hearing about imperialists. Somebody's encouraging imperialists, discussing imperialists, but at the same time is doing that the imperialists are demanding to do. how can you encouraging to have a pipeline from your country to go to another country? Well, you know very well that those are the action that the imperialists are advocating for. And as we know very well that the Westerners, they don't want Africa to be industrialized. That their aim, that the classes, that the courses or intellectual discipline that they are giving to their kids don't allow Africans to be industrialized or manufacturers. Let them selling us or let them providing with raw materials to our companies. And then the same way, our African leaders are allowing the imperialists or Western to take the raw materials from us by begging to them to come and take our raw materials from us. That is very dangerous. That is not the way how Africans are going to grow. Africa is going to grow when we are self-independent with our resources that we have, and then we can make it to be industrial production or manufacturing production. There is no way how the country can grow without industrialization revolution. There is no way. That's why they are saying that if we allow Africans or African countries to grow in manufacturing and also industrialization, the Western companies will not be able to operate, will collapse immediately. So that's even why the Gaddafi was killed, because of that, because he had an idea. He had an idea of make Africa to be self-independent in manufacturing and also in industrialization. That's why they took him, having minor reasons of human rights violation. That was not even the case. So I'm happy that that pipeline was stopped or was delayed, as in the case, according to the news all over the press, according to the speeches, that it was delayed for 1 year. But it's very dangerous. How can you build that kind of pipeline that way when every country is fighting for the global warming, for global disasters, for environmental disasters? Are we in Uganda capable to stop such kind of environmental disasters like that one? Even if we cannot even control the minor environmental disaster that we had before. We don't have that capacity. What about this big project like this, if it causes the damage? That it means that people, everybody will be dead because we don't have the capacity to control that kind of disaster moment if that pipeline collapses. Because even if you cannot even fight for our people in Maduda, the floods, the soil degradation, if you cannot have that capacity, how are you going to handle that pipeline when it collapses? There is no way. So we need to stop that move, and then we need to look at other means how we can attain that oil that Uganda possesses by at least having refinery. But you cannot go to have refinery in this kind of government unless we change the government, go back to the federal system of governance. That is only the way how we are going to helping us to handle such kind of issue. But thank you so much for the program. But let us pray that people can know the importance of UNN, the purpose of UNN. the CNN started to retrieve our country, to have all these programs, to be self-independent in manufacturing, to be self-independent in industrialization, to be independent as we got the independence. Because now if you are be under this Westerners, we are not independent. We are not independent at all. So it is high time people to join the Uganda Federal Consultative Council in order to bring the idea. It's better. Oh, we are encouraging all Ugandans to join the Uganda Federal Consultative Council, to bring the ideas together, the acts together, and also to be participants in all the activities that are going to help retrieve our country. Thank you so much for the program, and have a lovely evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Matthias, for your commentary. And with that being said, I'll yield the floor to Senior Chancellor.
Well, gentlemen, if I could borrow from Shakespeare when he wrote about Julius Caesar, I would probably use the same words, saying, I don't come to praise Museveni, but to define him, for Museveni is very stupid. You cannot talk about imperialist the way he talks about it and turn around and do exactly what the imperialists want you to do, unless you're stupid. So I think that answers that gentleman's comment. Thank you.
And then we're going to listen to a message. This is from Mayembe from Kayunga in Buganda State.
Mwebale nnyo okuweereza mukyala Desire mwami Kintu tusanyusa okubalaba naye bwe tuba twogera ku nsonga z'amafuta zino nze nina engeri gye nzitunuulira. Tetujja kutunuulira nsonga z'amafuta zokka, oba otunuulira ensonga zonna eziri mu ggwanga olabira ddala ng'ebintu by'eggwanga bino bya kifiiriza babikola balinga abajjamu obujja ezaabwe bagende batambule bagende. Kuba bw'otunuulira pipeline eno Uganda weeva e Bunyoro egende Tanzania, ensi ya Tanzania nnene nnyo eri mu Uganda nga 6. Ensi ya Tanzania eri mu Uganda nga 6 oba n'okusoba. Yes, kati bw'otunuulira amafuta ogatambuza okuva e Uganda, ozimbe pipeline okuva ensi 6 Uganda 6 oba otuuse infact oba n'okusoba siyinza okuba nga ogwo omulimu gugenda kukositinga ssente mmeka. Ekyo ng'okitadde ku bbali. Lwaki mwakitegera bulungi nnyo, gavumenti yakitegeera bulungi nnyo nti okuzimba pipeline kya bbeeyi nnyo n'okukola refinery waka. N'ekirala okutambuza amafuta gano kiri risiki. Era kyenze kiddawo okubuuza amafuta gano gye gagenda okuyita mu bibira mu ttale, ani agenda okugakuuma singa banaataapingako ne bagabba? Yes, abantu basobola okutaapinga amafuta ago. Eyo loosi enaabeera y'ani? Ekirala ekibuuzo kyange mwami Kintu kye mbadde njagala okubuuza, omulimu guno gwateekebwamu ssente nti bonna tukimanyi nti omulimu gwatandika okutambula era gukolebwa singa European Union nga bwe babyogedde amawanga e Bulaya gagamba tusooke tulindeko imikeso omulimu guno ne gusigalira awo guli, eggwanga ligenda ekintu kinaabeera kitya? Kubanga tukimanyi bulungi ffe Uganda tetulina ssente zisobola okufananyizinga kintu kino. Ekirala, bano abantu abatufuga wano balina mwako obuntu oba kuba bakimanyi nti bino ebintu bya bbeeyi okubikola. Olabira ddala effutwa eriri mu bantu bano obutaagaliza bannansi n'obutaagaliza nsi Uganda ne bannayuganda okubalira awamu okuba nti basobola okufunamu ekintu eky'omuganyulo mu nsi yaabwe. Nze nina statements ze ndaba mu bantu bano nga bazoogera balinga abakayanira ensi yaffe oti balinga abagamba baffe ffe tetuli bantu. Ntera nnyo okubalaba nga boogera ebintu bya tribalism buli lwawulira nga oli yeeyita omunyolo yeeyita omuganda ekintu kino kibayisa bubi. Era buli bagamba tribalism ffe twabivaako bwe munaazimbira eggwanga ku tribalism ebintu bijja kubalema. Lwaki mugamba nti tribalism oba tribal lwaki mukivumirira naye ate nga bye mwasangawo ate mu bye muyita tribal ate n'emanya gaffe agamu ge mwetuuma agamu mwe mugalesse abantu bano kiki nnyo ekigendererwa. Ekirala ekisemba mbuuziza ekibuuzo kya mwami kino mbadde nsaba kinzirimu omulimu guno gugenda kukolebwa gutya singa ebintu bino biyimirira bwe biti kuba mulende gwatandika gwatandika singa biyimirira wano tugenda kukola tutya. Era nze nebuuza nti bukuumi ki gavumenti bwerina okukuuma omulimu guno okukuuma projekiti eno kubanga kuba mu bibira eyo gyegenda okuyita nze gamba ensi ya Tanzania nene nnyo eri mu Uganda nga 7 kugenda kuggwa ddi era ani agenda okukuuma that area ani agenda okukuumayo singa abantu b'ettima bajja ne basala payipu eyo amafuna gatandika okugenda anyhow ne gagenda gye galagawo. So bannange nze ndabira ddala ettima eriri mu bantu bano Museveni talina kyayagaliza bannayuganda gavumenti eno terina kyayagaliza bannayuganda kubeera bulungi okujja kukuba n'abantu bano abalyamu obuli bano onjiwadde omuliro naye bannayuganda balina kye batwagala yadde neki mwebale kuweereza.
Thank you so much, Mayembe, for your question and comment. I'll yield the floor to Senior Chintu for translation and to answer to your question.
Well, Mr. Mayembe has been complaining about exactly the same things we have described in this project. It is very stupid to build a pipeline that long distance. The cost of that pipeline may be greater than the cost of building a refinery. 2, there is no guarantee that you are going to protect it, and there is no guarantee that if there is any sabotage, you have emergency measures to stop the spill if it was damaged by accident or by some deliberate action. I have explained very, very openly about the potential dangers with regards to security in the region and the possible explosions, because we have built-in dangers, namely East Africa cannot and will not be dominated by one tribe, the Tutsis. It will not. It is a matter of time that we, the indigenous people, are going to rise up and do something to stop this exploitation. Now, this gentleman has raised the issue of the distance. Definitely, I agree with him. I cannot agree with him with regards to whether Uganda can, the size of Tanzania is, Uganda can be squeezed in Tanzania 6 times. I don't have that information, but definitely I have ever traveled by land from Mutukula all the way to Dar es Salaam. I know how big that country is. I also know that we have a Rift Valley after Tabora, whereby the Rift Valley goes down 1 mile and rises up 1 mile. Now, you are talking about real good technological maneuvers to get that pipe down 1 mile and then rise it up 1 mile and they continue going down to the coast. You don't have to be a great civil engineer or whatever to figure out that this is stupid, plain stupid, to think of a pipeline in Mombasa. I can't figure out a polite way to describe it. It is plain stupid. Now, Museveni and his gang, thinking that they are going to do this, they are not saying that because of any other reason, but because they are going to steal the money. If you remember the speech of President Magufuli, when Museveni was sitting there, Magufuli was complaining why Museveni has not been able to accomplish his portion of building the pipeline when Tanzania has already done so much. I presume this portion we are seeing is not in Uganda but Tanzania, because in Uganda, if you bring any $1 million to start cutting the trees and digging the soil, as you are seeing in this picture, those bastards are going to eat that money before they even cut one tree. That's the danger. Corruption in Uganda past what you would call astronomical proportions. There is no way you are going to get anything done under this regime, even if it is a good project. So my conclusion to this is we all Ugandans must rise up, get rid of this government as quickly as possible, stop this pipeline, and rebuild whatever portion of our land that has been dug or destroyed. We can replant the trees in that area, and we'll see Uganda coming back to sanity and build an oil refinery. We will get some foreign country, I cannot say which one, but we have many, many options whereby we can cooperate with them and get the technology, rebuild the refinery, train our people, manage it. They will learn and they will manage it. And eventually we are going to be self-sufficient and be proud of our country and manage our destiny as we see fit.
So, Senior, this brings me to our last comment for today's show, or our last contribution to today's show. This is coming in from Lawrence, and Lawrence states, one supplementary point on the oil issue is that it is a heated pipeline. It needs electricity to enable the liquid flow, not accounting for the nature of the land, slopes, or the hills. And also, must I just mention on this pipeline is also supposed to go through the basin of Naluvale. And of course, it is the longest in the world. I sure hope that the geologists and the petroleum engineers have a solid feasible study. The issue is to sacrifice land, water, electricity, and indebtedness. It is a steep price. Thank you for the show. I yield the floor to you, Senior.
Thank you, Lawrence, for that information. I think people have heard it and they understand what is entailed in this pipeline. And I think that strengthens our belief that we must do everything possible to stop it for the good of our country. God bless you, and I hope we can continue using our brains to save this country. It is only the use of our brains that will save Uganda from the Tutsi domination and the mismanagement and destruction of Uganda. Without our brains, there is no chances of succeeding.
And Senior, I know I said that was our last message, but it seems like we have an anonymous message from Uganda. So we will cover this as our last message, and then we will head over with our closing statements after we reply to this one. So I'll go ahead and play it.
Tizaako mwena Mr. Remedius Kintu ne Madam Desire nammwe abawuliriza naye ekibuuzo kyange kimbuuza nti opposition n'ebyo tebiraba ebyamafuta naye nga opposition yo zo zituyamba ki etuyambira ki ddala ugamba nga amafuta gaffe gatuusa okuba bwe gatyo nga bagatwala resources zaffe zonna bazitwala fensi yaffe terina kyeba bali mu mbaga tetutegeera kiki Besigye ng'ebyo tabyogerako ebyo Besigye nga tebabyogerako babyo tebabiraba ye opposition y'eggwanga egasa ki bannange opposition eri mu Uganda egasa ki yene saawa gye yanditandise okuyamba ku ggwanga lyayo netandika okutuyambako bibyo babalonze bibateeseza mu parliament naye tebalina kye bayambi muntu wa bulijjo benjoyinga bifo ebyo ebidumu byabwe babizimbe naye bipaipo byabwe babizimbe naye kyamazima bino at least bikubwe bomu biveewo ffenna tubifiirwe eggwanga lyaffe terijja kubbibwayo ebityo ng'abantu ab'olubatu batutawaanya ate ne bannayuganda nabo beetuddeko tubagamba okukola associations tubagamba okutandika bali mu ngwanga balaba eggwanga liggwawo bannange abantu abakulu befudde abatalaba bali mu bintu bya mazina biki ensi basooke bakole kino deni bino bamazina bajja bikola nga baterezezza ensi bajja nakuba n'emirembe egisingaawo naye ensi bagifudde ki bannange ye opposition kambuze mu Zaire Medius Kintu mbadde njagala ntegeere bukyanga Besigye avuganya Museveni kaki akoledde kugamba nti Besigye kana akakoledde eggwanga nti oba opposition kino FDC yakolera kino eggwanga Uganda oba gundi ebibiina byonna ebyo opposition ebyo opposinga njagala kitegeera byo bikodedde ky'eggwanga lyaffe tetunagamba nti oba kino yakikolera eggwanga yo oba tezibadde tezifuna musaala zo zigasa ky'eggwanga bo batubuulire bagasa ky'eggwanga ebintu bwe bityo nga bituukawo abaana baffe bagenda kukula batya bagenda kufunamu ki bo nga bo abazadde kyabagirabanga yeyo gye batereezezza bannange tuli banyiivu nno basiiba bajja mu nsi batambula mu mawanga batambudde mu mawanga bo tebeegomba mu obusiisisi obutono bwe balaba obusiisisi obutono nga bulina ebintu byabo bibikola naye bo abeffe tebeegombako bannange bya bugundi oba biyita batya balina ebintu bye beegomba bizinazina bikikiki biyimbayimba ebitaliimu magezi abantu bye beegomba bannange tutereeze ensi yaffe ensi ffe abalina ogyetereereza abo abanyarwanda bo bagenda naye naffe tutudde waliwo ebintu bye tulina osimbire kuuli bano abasajja abakulu abaweza emyaka 6 myaka 4 mufunyeko kasente akukamala life yammwe kyeyongerayo mutandika okulamba ku baana bammwe future eddawo muba mwazaala buli ayazaala kikakatako ke kaseera otaase eggwanga oba ofudde ffa naye ng'omanyi kyolwaniridde nti omwana we ogenda muleka mu kkubo ki bwe babayo ebintu webityo byatandise obitwala bannange tweyambe yene essaawa mwebale kuweereza naye ebintu webityo bannange opposition ebireseemu n'omuzannyo abasajja abakulu abalinamu omulamwa bonna basirise komaawo.
Senior Kintu, I yield to you to reply to this gentleman.
That gentleman has raised very important issues. One, mostly he has raised the issue of what is our opposition doing? What good are they for the country? And he is also asking, do the members of the opposition see all these things that are befalling our country? Do they see this catastrophe we are in? He's also asking, why are they inactive? He also zeroed in on Besigye, said ever since Besigye claimed to be opposed to the NRM regime, what has he contributed to Uganda? What has he done in order to save our country from all the disasters it has faced? Well, I will start with Besigye. Besigye has contributed very negatively to Uganda. He's the one who destroyed or participated in the destruction of our local government system and introduced this stupid resistance council system, which is very, very dangerous and disastrous to our way of managing local affairs in the country. That has been his contribution, and it will even be written on his gravestone that Besigye destroyed our county, like Saza, Gombolora, Muruka system of administration, which had which had endured the test of time for centuries, and introduced this LOC or RC. Some people call it Rwanda Council, and finally they changed it to LOC instead of RC, because they were embarrassed when it was found out that it is Rwanda Council. So they called it Local Council, LOC1 or LOC5. That is his contribution. Now, the opposition you are talking about, I presume you are talking about the opposition in parliament. Well, you have to understand this. You do not have an opposition in parliament. You have people who went there to do Museveni's will. You cannot succeed to become a member of parliament unless Museveni and his inner circles have given you the blessing, period. Give me one opposition member who can honestly come out and say he succeeded becoming a member of parliament without the blessing of Museveni and his people. That is why in regions like Buganda, we have pumpkins sitting in parliament as MOP. The most notorious one was one who couldn't even pronounce his own name or the name of his party he pretended to be representing. And when he was finally voted out, he said, please, why did you vote me out? You should have given me more chance to eat, because all he went there is to eat. He's looking at that 50 million shillings a month that he's now losing. And there are many others who are now looking at that 50 million. That's what they went there for. They didn't go there to represent you. Have you heard them talk about when we had the landslide in Bugishu? Not even the MOP from that region screamed out murder. No. Have you heard them talk about the people being killed in Karamoja? When we saw pictures of dead people having been killed by Mohozi's boys, and their dead bodies were scattered all over the grassland. After that, we had the people in Karamoja being killed by famine. Have you heard these MPs come up? No. When people were being killed in Masaka by the Kijambia gangs, which were sent there by these Kayuras, did you hear the MPs scream? No. When our children are suffering and dying in the Middle East, these MPs sitting on millions of shillings they get free from Museveni, did you hear them say, let us charter? They have the money. They can charter even 10 planes. Because I don't believe that chartering a flight from Dubai to Uganda would cost you an amount of money which these people cannot afford to pay. If they took off, say, 1/3 of what they are getting from their boss, Museveni, they can charter 10 planes and rescue our children from the Middle East. No, they didn't do it. But they have spent millions and millions of shillings for their own weddings, parties, birthday parties, and other celebrations. Now, you people remember, Nubian Lee wedding cost 800 million shillings. I think it was 800 or 80 million. I think it was 800 million. You can correct me, but the figure is around there. Just for a wedding. Can you imagine? And how many birthdays they have celebrated? And even rented orchestras in Cape Town to play for their birthday parties. When I say orchestras, these were Muzungu orchestras in Cape Town being rented to play for them at birthday parties. How much money is being spent in these bogus conventions overseas? Renting a Hilton Hotel in California is not a cheap proposition. How much money is being wasted there? It's a lot. Spending money dancing and singing and drinking and having free sex is not going to rescue the country. Is not going to get rid of the dictator, no matter how much you shout. So this is the danger Uganda is in. We have to start focusing on saving the country, not smoking dope. We have to focus on using our brains and our energy to save the country from Museveni and his Tutsi invaders, not chasing their daughters and incorporating them in our bedrooms day in and day out. That's not going to save the country. We have to focus on things that will build the country, not things that will destroy it. Yes, you are right to complain about all the extravagant and conspicuous consumption of luxury cars, luxury clothing, luxury shopping, and luxury touring different countries. Yes, you can do that after Uganda has been saved from your friends, because I think you call them friends, because I know some of you people don't even see that Uganda is invaded and taken over by Tutsis. Yeah, it reminds me of the first American president, George Washington, said, "We study war so that our children can study and enjoy the arts and sciences." This is the time for us to concentrate on saving Uganda by any means necessary so that our children and grandchildren can live in a Uganda that is free and safe and enjoy their birthday celebrations and weddings as Ugandans, not as refugees in foreign countries. Thank you very much for that comment.
Next, we're going to have this is from Brother Malik from the UK.
Thanks for hosting the show, Desire, and bringing you in UNN studios. This is economic racism from EU, but as long as it doesn't suit them, that's when they start to pull out the race card. Now, we all know Museveni and his little bunch of criminals. These people have never been Pan-Africanists, and they've never advocated for any Pan-African cause. You know, they're just using that as a way to carry out their own agendas, you know, especially with the the East African, Federation, like something that they keep pushing on, like, hey, we want like a East African Federation so that we can integrate our economies and stuff. But these are just bunch of criminal like Tutsis who are trying to infiltrate, these other countries in the Great Lakes region. Okay, let me just go back to the what is it? To the subject. So when we look at this pipeline, first and foremost, it's very, very dangerous to our environment and is hazardous. So there's no need for them to even to pull out the race card. And the other thing is, our elders, there is no country that can lift its bootstrap without industrialization. We need aggressive industrialization. We cannot sell raw materials and feel like, okay, you know what, we are going to grow as a economy. But thanks for hosting the show and bringing Mr. Tune too. You take care, guys. Bye.
Senior Chinto, I yield the floor to you if you'd like to
Well,
comment.
it's good that Brother Malik has said that. Definitely, Museveni has never, and I put that in capital letters, Museveni has never been a Pan-Africanist, and he will never be a Pan-Africanist. He is a tribalist par excellence. He's so tribalistic that he makes the word stink. Let me remind Yoweri Museveni, and I'm speaking directly to you. When you were in that hotel room with the late Yusuf Rule after the Mosh conference, and President Nyerere sent Benjamin Mkapa to tell Rule, now start forming a government that we are going to plant into the country after our boys have taken over Kampala. Yoweri Museveni came up with 17 names after Rule had said, we want a cabinet of no more than 13 ministers, which you all agreed to. Museveni brought a list on a piece of paper of 17 names. And I want to tell you, Yoweri Museveni, I have that piece of paper on which you had 17 names, out of which Rule should pick 13 to be ministers. And all the 17 names were Banyarwandas. You purported to be Banyankore. When Yusuf Rule asked you, come on, Yoweri, you don't even know a Muganda or a Musoga or an Acholi, and your answer was in Luganda. Abonze bemanyi. These are the people I know. Are you trying to tell us that you didn't know any Muganda or Acholi or Langi? You used to be a very staunch UPC man. You didn't even know a Langi?
And he was fighting in Luero.
That was right after the Moshi conference. That tells you this man is a tribalist par excellence, and he has now revealed his true colors, whereby everybody in every position is a Munyarwanda in Uganda. And you've seen pictures, recent pictures, including the most recent one of his half-brother, Salimu Saleh, speaking to some audience in order to challenge Lumbuye, who was saying that he is already dead. How many people were sitting there, and who were they? They were all Banyarwandas. So stop talking about Pan-Africanism. It is not in your blood. You are a tribalist par excellence, and that's what you are going to die like. And unfortunately, you are going to cause a lot of damage to your tribesmen because they are all going to share into your sins.
And singing into the last commentary, this person raised that the transition at which it has gone from being my oil, where Museveni says my oil, versus now it's our oil. And if I can take a chance to reply to this, as you know, we should remember this is where we're very important to the nation. Museveni actually can't do anything without Ugandans. To us, he can step on us and stand on a podium and tell all of us how this is his oil. But when the decision comes down to it, now he has to use Uganda as a nation and claim economic racism in order for people to hear him, because no one really views Uganda as Museveni's property, apart from Museveni's delusional self and all his friends and family. But then the person continued to also raise that now the sole opposition are busy on Salim Saleh, whether he's dead or alive. But how does the answer to both even help our revolution to begin with? Is there anything going to be done by the unoppressed? Is there anything going to be done for unoppressed Uganda if Salim Saleh dies, or if we look for him and find out that he's alive? And also, don't they know where they're acting like they don't know where his home or offices are? If they can't even manage that simple intelligence to know on where Salim Saleh is, where he is, and we're all depending on Lumbuye's drones, all we can do is really pity ourselves or pity those people who are relying on Lumbuye's obnoxious drones. So that was that was our last message for today. And Senior Chitu, if you would like to comment on that as well.
Well, frankly speaking, I don't give a damn whether Salim Saleh is alive or dead.
I forget. That being said, Senior Chitu, we are towards the end of the show today, and I'd like to thank you for being here as per usual, and would like to invite you to give your closing statement for today.
Well, thank you, Desire, for this program. And we thank you all, ladies and gentlemen, who have been following us today. We just want to remind you that we have a job to do. We should not be specialists in eloquent explanation of our suffering. We should be specialists in finding a solution to Uganda's suffering. And the solution is very, very clear cut. Get rid of these people. Get rid of these Batusi. Let us regain our country so that Uganda is owned, managed, directed, and controlled by indigenous Ugandans under a federal system of government whereby each federal state is in control of its own territory. And we unite in a federal government for the common causes such as national defense, economic development, and other essential services to our people. It's until we reach that point, we are not going to be out of the woods. Another thing I want to remind my fellow Ugandans, you may like it or not, stop chasing butterflies. They are not going to help you. They are just out there to display their beautiful colors and flying around the country or the world, but just displaying their beautiful colors. And that's no less, no more from them. Stop chasing butterflies. Come back to your senses, look at your country, act as responsible citizens of Uganda. Thank you very much. Hope to see you again soon.
Thank you so much, Senior Chinzo, for that. And I would also like to thank everyone who's been with us from where we started to where we are at now. I cannot add much to what has already, it's all been said in the show today, and I will be doing a disservice by adding too much to everything that's been said thus far. But it still remains important that we all recognize that there is a duty that we owe to this nation and we must deliver. And it's very important right now to see people by their actions so that when they bring words around, because 2026 is not far away, and we thank God for this window of awakening that has happened, that we have been able to remind ourselves of what we need to be done, where we cannot be taken advantage of, and where we can start to draw boundaries so that campaign, and 2026 is not even the year to wait for. Campaign season is here as of the end of this year. Mohozi Project campaign already even started earlier on this year. So we do know how politically everyone's moving. And then this is our time to strike with our pressure. The more we apply pressure, the more it will lean towards our side. And I believe that there is a pathway for us. There has always been, and victory is ours. But with that being said, I'd like to wish you all a good afternoon, a good evening, a good morning from wherever you're watching. If you've not something, tell the next person. And the next time we listen to people, let us look for, in Luganda we say echinyusi. Let there be essence in what they're telling you. Not a promise that, yes, I'm going to become the president here and I'll have different rules and I'll give police 1 million, but let there be essence to their plan. Let them tell us about what are you going to do to bring jobs here. Let them talk about industrialization. Let them talk about policy plan making. Let there be foundations to the stuff they tell us before we follow our next candidate. But with that being said, I'd like to wish you all a great evening, a good morning, a good afternoon from wherever you're watching. And it's within federal governance that we can actually find harmony in within that nation of concocted and brought together nationalities. But God bless you all. You all have a good rest of your day. Until we meet again, be it next Sunday or during the week. Have a good rest of your week or the beginning of your week. This was the Tower at UNN.
I know that your support will be unfailingly given. God help me to make good my vow, and God bless all of you who are willing to share in it.
Our purpose here is to observe, to learn, to grow, to love, and then we return home.